Urban legends are a very strange enigma. As a society, we are drawn to stories of strange happenings, mythical creatures, and chilling crimes. High strangeness and stories that surround it have their roots in many myths and legends that societies were built around. Urban legends have evolved with technology. Instead of only being told around a campfire to a few close friends, thousands of people can get the same spooky tale directly on their phone. This mass exchange of stories, thoughts, and ideas could have negative impacts. The Slenderman, a humanoid creature known for his tall, thin stature, white, featureless face, and unnaturally long, tentacle-like arms, will be our focus today. Although the Slenderman seems to be only an internet-fueled urban legend, religious texts and parapsychological research tell a different story. Is the human mind powerful enough to not only imagine a creature as terrifying as Slenderman, but to also manifest it into existence? Grab your headphones and prepare to look at things from the other side. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the very first episode of the Other Side Podcast. My name is John, and I'm joined today by my guest host, Travis.
Hello, good sir.
And do you know what we're talking about today?
I have a feeling I know what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, we're going to be talking about the Slenderman Phenomenon. Now, do you know anything at all about Slenderman?
I do know some. I did watch the movie from a couple years ago, and I also did some research at that time on it to get a feel for the phenomenon and what was going on.
You know it's how it started, right? You know the bare minimum. Do you know any of?
Oh yeah, it was a meme on the internet created by people.
Okay, yeah.
And it started on creepy pasta.
Well, close. Like it blew up on creepypasta. If you want
pasta, yeah.
If you just want to jump into it, Slenderman was actually created, like first uploaded to the internet on June 10th, 2009, and it started on a thread on the Something Awful forums. It was kind of like Reddit and 4chan before they became mainstream, and the thread it was posted in was a Photoshop contest where people were supposed to make creative paranormal images. So they would take these regular pictures and they'd add a ghost, they'd add Bigfoot. It was like a little bit of a scavenger hunt trying to find the weird thing. And a man named Eric, I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong, Knudsen, made 2 black and white pictures of like kids on playgrounds, and in the background was Slenderman.
Yes. I have seen those photos before.
Well, he was one of the only people in that thread to add like some text to go along with it, describing it. And that's how it got the name, the Slender Man. It was talking about kids being abducted and everything's like they were taken by the Slender Man. And then it would be like, a survivor said this.
Interesting.
It started out as a meme. Like he was very much inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, and he actually modeled Slenderman kinda after accounts of the Men in Black, because they're described as men in suits, super pale, weird faces, so he gave Slenderman no face.
No facial features at all.
Yeah, and then he also used described the phenomenon, how the kids would go missing, and Slenderman would just creep there as the way like shadow people, like the paranormal whatever shadow people would do.
Yes.
It didn't really take off completely until December of 2009. And you know Art Bell's old show, Coast to Coast AM?
I've heard of it.
Okay. Basically the podcast before podcast. It was a paranormal radio show, spanned coast to coast, and he would get all kinds of weird calls. And the new guy that took it over, He does the same stuff. He'll take calls, and people will tell him really weird paranormal stories. Starting in 2009, like right after this stuff happened, all these people would call in talking about a weird creature they have begun to fear. Several of the callers reported to see, both in their nightmares and in real life, a tall, thin, faceless entity that terrified them. And these were like the first reported sightings of the Slender Man.
Were the callers the parents or actual just individuals? Like, were they parents of children is the question. Because, Slender Man is more of a, I feel like more of a child thing. So was it like parents of children?
From what I could tell, I listened to a few of them. There's like one or two parents, and then most of them were like 20 something, 30 something year old people.
So still younger generational
Yeah,
people.
younger people. Most of the people that called in, they're all, 20s and 30s. There's a few parents calling in because their kids had told them weird stuff of them seeing the Slender Man, and they were a little concerned because like weird things would happen around the house and they really had no explanation. But for the most part, most of the callers who were calling in seemed to be in their 20s and 30s. There was a few like late teens in there. But for the most part, it was people older than the demographic that was fans of Slender Man at the time.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering. Was like, was it an older demographic or not about it calling in? Because you look at like back then with the internet, it would have been more people late teens, 20s, and 30s that probably read this or heard about this in the beginning, especially.
Yeah,
So
like
it really wouldn't have caught on for kids, I don't think, until maybe a few years later,
and they
or
started
once it
getting
really,
smartphones.
when the smartphone business severely took off, and when kids got old enough to actually get on the YouTubes and the video websites and figure it out and find out what the Slender Man was.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean that's probably the reason why it was mainly older people calling in.
Because I mean, I was in high school at that time, and I remember seeing something at some point, but never actually looked into it, I guess you would say, because I never thought anything of it.
I mean,
So
I remember it from back then. But like my first introduction to it, do you remember Topics?
yes,
So I would get on Topics every once in a while because they would start threads about like ghost stories in my town, and I would read
yes,
it. And one of them was talking about they were on like the interstate and they saw Slender Man, and then there's a few people replying to them. They're like, "Oh, I saw it at downtown. I saw it at the park," and like there was a little thread about Slender Man where where we live on Topics for a little bit before the site got taken down.
down.
Yeah, that was my first introduction to it.
And YouTube just wasn't as big then. I mean, it was big, but not like billions of users a day like it is now.
Yeah,
And like the
definitely.
other video websites weren't as big. So, I mean, you really had to kind of go search for it almost, you know?
Yeah,
Like the one website it started on was a bigger website, but it wasn't highly trafficked.
nothing on the internet was as mainstream as it is now. Like you weren't gonna open your phone and it was gonna automatically aggregate those weird articles, weird news things to you.
Yeah, absolutely not. But now, I mean, you can just Google anything you want or DuckDuckGo or something like that, and you can find about anything you want just instantaneously.
Yeah.
And you'll get millions upon millions of results. Then you've got to kind of cipher through what is legitimate and not legitimate at that point.
Yeah. Well, like the calls, the coast to coast AM, is what really it lit the fuse and started like the Slender Man craze on the internet. All these different forums and blogs were just being filled up with personal encounters and posts about Slender Man. A lot of them were fiction, just like stories to add to the lore,
Yeah.
kind of piggybacking on the guy that created its pictures and stories. But then there is the people that were telling real stories, the people that actually think they saw them in the woods. And it actually, like, it for a little bit of time, it became its own subsection of like paranormal research. People like actually trying to catch Slender Man. Now, most of the stuff on YouTube is like clickbait, trying to trick little kids that they see Slender Man. But back then, there was people going out trying to actually catch it on film.
Oh yeah, people were going out anywhere and everywhere they could think of, especially once dark came, to try to find something. I do remember that stuff.
I remember watching, it was one guy on like early YouTube. I think he's one of the reasons why I'm weird, because he's like, I don't know if this is weird or real or not. He was basically redneck Fox Mulder. He would get in the back of his pickup truck with his dog, and he'd go out in the woods with a gun and like a very crappy early 2000s camera that I'm very surprised he was able to still record on because of how bad quality it was. And he's like, it's either gonna catch me or I'm gonna catch it. And he never got anything, but he was fun to watch.
Hell yeah. It's people like that that really made stuff take off, especially, I think.
I mean, that's what YouTube was at the time. YouTube wasn't like, let's go watch PewDiePie or let's go watch, this specific creator. YouTube was mainly like, let's get on there and watch whatever the top viral videos are on the front page.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was great because it felt like you were actually a part of it at the time.
Yeah, and you got a bigger variety of
oh yeah, absolutely. Now everything's so focused almost.
Well, at the same time as all this is happening, they decided to make an indie game called Slender, where you are exploring the woods with a flashlight, trying to find these cages everywhere, and Slender Man's hunting you down. And that's another thing that helped push it out into the mainstream, because that was right when gaming on YouTube was becoming increasingly popular. Once people started branching away from like Call of Duty, it was these indie horror games, and people like PewDiePie and Markiplier and all these YouTubers that became famous for like reacting to scary games. They were playing that. That's like the grandfather of I'm going to scream on YouTube and make money.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. That helped blow it up. I think I was watching something a while back, a documentary, and that it talked about that game specifically and how it really helped people gain fame on top of making the phenomenon of the Slender Man more realistic and more popular at the same time.
Yeah, like that's definitely one of the reasons why the Slender Man mythos expanded the way it did. Because there's so many people that were just funneling to watch those gamers react to it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can remember when I was younger watching people react to stuff like that.
Well, have you ever heard of a YouTube channel called Marble Hornets?
Not that I can recall.
Marble Hornets was the first YouTube channel to take like a step up in the Slenderman game. And they made, I'm not going to say it was Blair Witch style, but it resembled it. It was like a documentary, and it followed a guy who lost contact with one of his friends. He was filming a video in his hometown. It was called Marble Hornets, and like it was going to be like a little movie for like their film school for him to graduate. The guy had a mental breakdown, so his friend reached out to him. He's like, "What the hell happened?" And he gave him this box of tapes, and he's like, "Burn these. If you want to find out what happened, watch them, but burn them, get rid of them." So the premise of it is he's watching these tapes a few years down the line, and it's all weird stuff. And there's like cult that follows Slender Man that's following this guy, and like he has actual like video of, Slender Man, air quotations. But it blew up. Like the Marble Hornets channel posted their Slender Man videos between 2009 and 2014. The first half of them, they all have at least 1 million views.
Wow.
Like it dipped down at the end.
Yeah.
But through all of it, they released just barely over 100 videos. And the entire channel has over 107 million views. But to go along with what you said earlier, creepypasta, it began to fuel the fire too. All these people were writing their own stories about Slenderman and adding to it, wanting to be part of the lore. And I remember where my mom's a school teacher, I would get out of school and go to her classroom, and I could get on the creepypasta wiki and hit like random story, and it would give me all these weird creepy stories randomly. So like I was there with the birth of all the creepypasta stories, and like over half of them, like I'd click the button and it'd be Slenderman story, and I'd click it again and it'd be Slenderman story, and I'd click it again and it'd be like murdered by pedophile in the woods. Like over half of them were Slenderman at the time. He's like, I think he's still one of the most popular characters to write about too, unlike these creepy story websites.
You can write about him, I think, because he's almost the easiest one to write about.
Like, there's a lot that you know about him, but there's also so much you don't know. You can add whatever. And any situation you put him in, it's going to be believable based on, like, the background that is around his stories.
Oh, yeah. The background is everything for him, I feel like. That was, like, the number one thing that made... Because it's like, if you take the original memes and where he's just kind of in the background and nobody knows, background is everything for him, I think.
Yeah, like I know there's a few movies, and one of them was called The Entity. It was this dude, and like his entire family was stalked by Slenderman, and like he went to his dad's house, went up to his room, and like couldn't find him, so he's like, oh, I guess I'll check in the closet. In the closet's all those like weird handwritten Slenderman drawings, like from the game.
Oh yeah.
So like you can add whatever, really. Like there's, if you want to get into like weird lore and urban legends, I mean, again, the Men in Black fall into Slenderman lore because he takes a lot of their attributes. He follows like stories of the Wendigo and skinwalkers and crawlers and all these other stories. He is just like an amalgam of all these creepy creatures and the reasons why you don't want to go out in the woods at night.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He falls into all of those categories.
I've actually gone out and I've searched through a bunch of stories for ones that are considered to be real sightings. It's not if I believe them or not. These are just the ones that are marketed the most as being real and people think could be real.
Okay, let's hear it.
It starts out with, I've seen him.
I've seen him. It started as dreams, but now he's showing up in random areas, at random times. And even though he's terrifying, I feel a sense of calm when he's around. The first time I saw him was at my boyfriend's house. In his room. I woke up from a nightmare and sat up. And there he was in the corner, just watching, stalking. I couldn't believe it was him. I shrugged it off as me being tired and still shaken from my nightmare I just had. The second time, I was at my boyfriend's again. And we were in his room. We were in bed. He was sleeping. And I got up to use the bathroom. I looked out the window. There he was again. Unusually tall, extremely thin, wearing that stupid black suit, just staring. I kept looking away and looking back, and he was there. I quickly ran to the bathroom and ran back to the bed, avoiding the window. The third time was 2 weekends ago, once again at my boyfriend's, and there he was again. Same spot as the first time. I couldn't believe it. And I began to feel that overwhelming feeling of calmness. He never shows his faceless face at my house, only at my boyfriend's. But I know he's near when I'm home, because my cable glitches, my TV signal goes in and out, my phone acts strange. I know that's him showing himself in a different way. And I know I'm not helping myself because my fascination continues to grow and I keep researching. The thought of Slenderman is terrifying, but whenever I see him, I'm calm and just amazed at his presence. He stares, I stare, and I feel okay. I don't know what it is. When he's near, I am not scared.
So that story was posted, and the descriptions I've read about it, I've tried to find more around it, and I've not really been able to find too much more. But the description said that this was like in a girl's journal before her family sent her to therapy because she kept saying she was seeing Slender Man. And I don't know if she posted it when she got out of therapy or if her parents posted it or if it's fake. But all the people in the comments of this and on like the forums that were talking about this specific story, they keep saying that it's a real encounter and that she's displaying something known as Slender Sickness, where you feel calm and kind of out of your head when Slender Man's around.
Which I feel is kind of, from everything I've read about the Slender Man over the years and different things, a lot of people feel calm around him, almost. I mean, I know there are cases where people are scared, especially littler kids, but I also feel like a more mature person just feels calm around them. Which is kind of interesting because you would think with a scary figure like this, or supposed scary figure, you would have more emotion to it. But a lot of people, I feel like, don't feel emotion almost. They're almost kind of lifeless around him.
Well, if you want to get it, again, Slender Man's taken on a bunch of characteristics. And if he is real, you know, that trait specifically comes from like old vampiric lore. Like if you hear any story about a vampire, real, fake, your crazy cousin talking to you, Alex Jones on a conspiracy theory podcast, okay? Like all of it is like you see a vampire, instantly like they look you in the eyes and you feel calm. Like they take some sort of control over your mind to calm you down.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there is a creature called Slender Man that is making people feel calm. But there's always a grain of truth in everything, even going all the way back, the vampire stories. There is something, some creature, some psychological thing. You might be doing it to yourself, but like if you're in a scary situation like that, something happens and like it triggers a sense of calm.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't understand it, but like
I don't understand it either, but that's kind of the general, I think.
I mean, a lot of these people too, they're always like, he's in the same spot. You know, in the morning, during the daytime, I don't see anything out there, but at night, he's in the same spot. And the way Slender Man's described, it could be a tree. Honestly, like an owl in a tree or something, like a white owl. Like, that's the face and the tree's his body. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I could see that.
Speaking of owls and trees and the forest, the second story that is also supposed to be true, and it even references creepypasta in it. It's a little bit more up close, I guess. To me, this is written the same way as like a Bigfoot sighting. So,
last night, I have no idea what happened. It started out creepy enough. It had been raining most of the day, and by 6 last night there was a fairly thick fog. My parents also went out, and I was stuck at home watching the dog. Around 7, as I was watching TV, the dog started acting weird. He'd randomly jump up and stare down the hall towards the bedroom, as if he'd seen or heard something. I didn't think too much of it since we have a cat, and I assumed that's what he was seeing. Even though we've had them both for 7 years, still haven't gotten used to each other. It wasn't until 7:30 when it got really weird. I went to the bathroom, and since I was home alone and the dog would scratch at the door if I closed it, I left it open. From the bathroom, if I look in the mirror at just the right angle, I could see across the hall and into my bedroom. When I was washing my hands, I saw it. There was a humanoid figure standing at my desk. The room was dark, the time of the day combined with the fog outside, causing only a dim blue-gray light to pour in, so I couldn't make out any details. What I could see was that the figure was tall and incredibly thin. Its head cleared the top of the window, so it was easily over 7 feet. It was just standing there, just glancing around the room. I walked out of the bathroom past the dog, who was acting like he had before, staring intently into my bedroom and into the room. It was empty. I managed to convince myself it was nothing, just something reflected funny in the mirror combined with the low light. A few minutes later, I went to let the cat out. At this point, it was almost pitch black out and the sun had almost completely set and the fog was thicker. So as I closed the door, I flicked the outside light on. Just at the edge of the light's range, right at the tree line of the backyard, I saw what looked like a crouched figure. As I stared at it, trying to tell if I was seeing things again, it slowly stood up. At that point, one of the neighbors got home, the headlights from their car illuminating the woods behind the house. Somehow, even though the surrounding trees were illuminated, the figure still seemed encased in shadow. Just as the car lights went out, the figure disappeared. It's safe to say I went around and made sure the doors were locked and turned off most of the lights in the house until my parents got back. I know someone's going to ask about this, but don't worry. I let the cat in later last night and she was fine. And I thought this whole Slenderman thing was just a creepypasta.
So that's basically a sighting. I mean, if this kid's to be believed, he probably read about Slenderman, saw something outside, couldn't explain it, and the first explanation he had was, wow, that looks like Slenderman. I'm not saying it is Slenderman. It could be something else, but
something could definitely be something else.
Stalking him in the woods, I'm not gonna say he didn't see anything.
Oh no, absolutely not. But at the same time, it's hard. I'm assuming from all accounts of Slenderman, he can just teleportation of some sort or something, I'm assuming. Can just go from one place to the other. So how did he go from the bedroom to out the backwoods?
Yeah, the best way I can describe it is he just blips. He's just like, there, gone. I mean, it changes story to story what he can do. I read one of them, and he was swinging from the trees using his back tentacles like Spider-Man. So it's whatever the person writing wants him to do. But
yeah.
I mean,
from a lot of that I've read, it seems like teleportation or something is his, or just like you said, in the blink of an eye, he's here and gone.
Well, that's what the Endermen from Minecraft are based on. They blip everywhere. So,
which is interesting. It's just odd that he would, from that story specifically, what really caught me was when he was in the backyard at the back of the edge of the woods, and even the neighbor's car lights didn't scare him off. It was when the lights went away, he disappeared. Because at that point, I would feel like that's your opportunity to stay. Obviously, the lights aren't going to affect you. So, where did it go? Why did it leave at that point?
I don't know, man. Maybe he's scared of the cat.
Maybe he's got fear of cats. Could be, yeah.
He can't handle the pussy. It
Uh,
could have been like a 7 foot tall home invader,
could have been.
like tall skinny Shaq. Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is
Anthony
creeping in the
Davis
woods.
coming through. Anthony Davis creeping in your backyard.
Dude, honestly, I think I'd be more scared to see Anthony Davis come up to my back door than Slender Man at this point.
I think I would too, because I think Anthony Davis would whoop your ass.
Well, he'd whoop my ass, and he's got that one eyebrow. It's scary.
Gets that unibrow.
He does. Bow to the brow. As more and more people, started to read Slenderman stories, more reports were coming in by individuals who were convinced that they were stalked by him. Like, there's people going to the police department hysterical, and they're like, Slenderman's stalking me. And the police didn't really take any of these serious. They're like, you're crazy. Like, Slenderman, there's no reason for the police to get involved in Slenderman. You're not seeing anything.
Yeah.
And
Like,
you're good.
the question is, though, like, what would have happened if somebody actually was being stalked, by just a giant person? They were just so far away you couldn't ever really tell their face, or, that would have been that could have turned ugly very quickly, in my opinion, especially for a police department if they didn't take something like that serious. Which obviously, I'm sure most police departments, once this got out there and everybody started doing research on it. But like, I was watching a documentary a while back on the Slender Man, and it was about the two girls in Wisconsin who stabbed their best friend, and it's like the police department said, we've never heard of Slender Man. Some of them, like the detectives, did, and I was like, well, that's kind of interesting, because at that point, it had been around for 5 years, and it had really hyped up by that point, by that issue, when that came to around.
Yeah, like, for the most part, most of my family's cops. So, like, I can talk about UFOs and aliens and shit like that. And they're like, well, that's nothing you need to worry about. And, like, anything that's abnormal, they don't really talk about. They're always focused on tangible stuff. And I guess that's just, like, being a cop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's just their thing. Yeah.
You're right, it could have turned violent pretty quickly, and what you were talking about, the girls in Wisconsin, is actually my next point. So, the Slenderman craze obviously got a lot worse in 2014, and that's when, on May 31st, 2014, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, a 12-year-old girl named Peyton Leutner was found stabbed, lying on the side of the road. She had been stabbed 19 times by two of her 12-year-old best friends, Morgan Gaser and Anissa Weir. I'm pretty sure I butchered both of those names. But they stabbed her in the name of Slender Man. So not only are people saying they are seeing Slender Man because they're paranoid and freaking out because of the stories, these girls decided to try to murder their best friend to appease him.
Because supposedly, from what I watched in that documentary, that they could go to his mansion.
Yeah.
Which really threw me for a loop, that, like, how far down the rabbit hole, we all go in the hole so far, but then we can get out. But, it was just kind of odd that, because in the documentary it talks about, like, they're from Wisconsin, somewhere, I think it's outside of Madison somewhere. Well, if you go, like, northwest of Madison, you go to Nicollet National Park, and that is supposedly where Slender Man's mansion is, at least according to them.
Yeah. Yeah, they said this on record, too, to the police. Like, they...
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say both of them. The girl who kind of orchestrated all of this was the Anissa Weir, Weier.
Yeah.
But when the police questioned both the girls, they put them in separate rooms. You obviously know this. The The one who stabbed her, Morgan Gaser, was super calm. Calmer than 12-year-old me would have been if I was pulled into an interrogation room after stabbing my friend. She walked in, she looked at the cops, and she's like, "Is my friend dead?" The cops were like, "No, she lived. We rescued her, and she said she was with you all last." And this girl looks directly at this cop who's interrogating her, and she's like, "I might as well just say it. We were trying to kill her." And she goes on to explain that the entire attempted murder was to appease, and this is a quote on record, "whoever Anissa was talking to. Anissa made it seem necessary. This is going to get me arrested, isn't it?" These girls didn't care.
No, I mean, no, they didn't at that point. They thought they were going to get a mansion and the Slender Man was going to come and live forever, and the Slender Man was going to come take them away, and they would not face consequences, which is clearly not what happened. Well, I mean, in the documentary, it talks about the girl getting stabbed 19 times, and like the one time they stabbed her in like the center of the chest, it missed her heart by a millimeter.
Yeah, like she used up all of her luck that day, and I mean that's good.
Oh, absolutely,
it was horrible what they did.
Oh, absolutely, it's horrible, and it's a miracle the girl survived, and it's amazing she got away, and somebody was able to find her.
I mean,
but it just blows my mind. Which Slender Man was really created, you know, in my opinion, if you look back at the original thing, the original memes of it and everything, it was created more, like you said, in the Men in Black thing and everything, and Skinwalker, but it almost looks like Jack Skellington to a child.
Yeah, I can see that. I've never thought about that till now.
But if you really think about it, how many kids have seen that movie? I can remember watching that as a kid. And, and then you see the Slender Man thing and you're like, wow. No wonder it appeased to kids.
Yeah, dude, honestly, I'm not saying I'd stab anyone, but I'd shit a brick to go hang out with Jack Skellington. He was cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that was some of the appeasement to the children part, especially to, which I know the specific situation, Wisconsin had the girls and their whatever, but I just think, the appeasement to children, and it resembles Jack Skellington so much. And if you go watch the YouTube videos and stuff and different things, in a lot of the YouTube videos, the kids are scared. But these girls weren't scared at all, which is what was scary to me about it. I remember reading about it back in 2014 and stuff, and it was they were just calm, cool, and collective about it all. I
don't think Anissa, the one behind it, was scared. But the girl that walked in, she's like, "My friend dead?" She seemed scared to an extent, because in her interrogation, they asked her, they're like, "Why'd you do this? What's going through your head?" And she's like, "Anissa said we had to do it. Because she said that he'd kill our families. A man. I don't know him, but Anissa knew him." And that's when they're like, "What the hell is this girl talking about?" So they interrogated the other girl, and she was telling them all about Slender Man, and she was talking about how she learned about Slender Man on the Creepypasta wiki. And she explains on the record, there was one called Slender Man. He can be anywhere from 6 feet tall to 14 feet tall. He's like a tall guy who constantly wears a suit. He doesn't have a face and his skin is white. And then she went on to talk about how Slender Man strangles his victims with the tentacles that come from his back, and he targets children the most, according to what she had learned in her research, thinking the stories on Creepypasta were true. And she said, on the record, it's a 12-year-old saying it on the record, but it's still, supposed to be the truth, only the truth, nothing but the truth. She said, "I actually thought he was real because I saw him. We were taking the bus, and I looked out the window to see this thing standing there with tendrils looked exactly like a tree. And then like that, he was gone. I was really scared because I knew that Slenderman could easily kill my whole family in 3 seconds. So, to prevent her whole family from being murdered in 3 seconds, her and her friend decided to show Slenderman that they were worthy by killing their friend, the girl who got stabbed. You know, they blamed each other for it, but she was the one that did the research, knew more about it, and they planned on killing their friend and going with Slenderman to his mansion in the woods. And the police later learned that the plot to kill their friend took 6 months to plan.
Which is crazy.
You had 6 months to click the wrong link and see something that's like Slenderman's fake, it's all made up. You had 6 months. How did no one know? That's the real question. I can't keep a secret for 6 days.
Yeah, I couldn't. I don't know how they didn't stumble upon, and maybe she did. We don't know, because there's so much stuff out there on it, especially by that point in time. Because, I mean, you're talking almost 5 years, 4.5 years to that point of when the meme was created till this happened. And it's amazing that, and as technically savvy as these girls were from the sound of it, that they never found out that it wasn't real, that there was no such thing.
I don't know.
Were they... I mean, that age is very impressionable, in my opinion, because you're changing as a person. Your mind's always changing. Your body's changing. You know, that 11 to 14 age group, a young person is changing all the time.
I definitely...
And it's very impressionable age.
Yeah. When I was in middle school, around the same age, we couldn't wear shirts with logos because they were afraid it would have a negative influence on us.
Yeah.
So like, just think, I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about the parents or anything like that, but like 2 kids with what seems like lenient, unrestricted internet access, I mean, it did something to them because they decided to try to kill their friend.
I think they're, like I said, I think sometimes you go down a rabbit hole and you can't get back out. And I don't know if that was this situation, but...
There's some rabbit holes you can kind of understand, though.
Like, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's a few of them, like, if you get all the way to the bottom, you can see the steps of how they ended up there. I don't see that with this.
No, I don't either.
Well, here's the real question for you, because, you know, you've heard sightings, and you've heard about the attempted murder to Slenderman, and God knows what else happened in the name of Slenderman that we don't know about. What do you think is actually causing these sightings, if these stories that were uploaded are real, and what is influencing people?
I think the biggest thing is people's imagination. I mean, people are very creative people, especially to write on the internet. And I know I've even been like, sometimes when I go to my place of business and it's closed on the weekends and I go back for something where I work at my job, I forgot a key or my wallet or something. And, you know, it's pitch black in there. And the only thing light-wise is like an exit sign. So, like, you can imagine seeing something at the end of the hallway and thinking, man, I got to get out of here. I've done that before. And I'll probably do that forever just because your mind plays tricks on you. I honestly think phenomenons like this, when they get blown up so quickly and so fast, especially in a younger generational person, you know, between 12 and 18, and they're very, very impressionable, that they can almost adapt that into their lifestyle. And I think impressionism is everything in something like this. You get on there and you get on a creepypasta and you read all these threads and stories and things, you're going to go to bed at night thinking about them at some point.
You're gonna go to sleep thinking about them. You're gonna wake up thinking about them. You're gonna dream about them. You're going to talk about it with your friends next day. It's going to be something constant that you're basically going to become obsessed with it. And then your mind's going to play tricks on you.
Absolutely. And I think that's what happens a lot. Now, am I saying that people ain't out there, aren't seeing things, maybe a spirit or something like that? I think that happens. But I also think the majority of things is in people's heads. And they get it on their mind so much. And sometimes you get scared of it. So you it gets dark outside, you see a shadow outside or something, and you think you see it. Or you take the one story from earlier of the boy or the person, and they thought they saw it in their bedroom, then they saw it out in their backyard. But then I think you can also look at it as, you know, me and you talk about different conspiracy theories a lot in different ways. And I think that goes along kind of with something like this, is because you kind of get something in your head and it kind of gets stuck there.
Yeah.
Like, there's just different things I think about randomly all the time. Not Slender Man particularly, but different theories of things about what would have happened and what should have happened, I guess.
Yeah. If I can backtrack and pick up an idea you've said, I actually have a quote saved, and I didn't say it earlier because it didn't really come into any of the stuff we were talking about, but this is perfect. You said, what if Slender Man is actually a spirit? You know, what if that's what people are seeing when they have these sightings? And this is from, I didn't get the name. I should have got the name, and I'll put it down in the description. I'll look it back up before I post this. But this researcher, he said, some people say there's no way Slender Man could be real. They say he was obviously made up by someone, so how could he be real? Other people argue that that there have been stories and sightings about beings like Slender Man throughout history, and that Slender Man could just be the new name for an old demon.
And that could be true.
If you go to Bobby Mackey's, one of the top paranormal hotspots in Kentucky, they've done an experiment. It's the Cincinnati ghost hunter guy. He does experiments over at Bobby Mackey's a lot. And, you know, the urban legend story with it is that a woman named Joanna was killed there. So they'd go in with their EVPs and spirit boxes and everything, trying to get reactions from a woman named Joanna. And they would. Like, this paranormal entity would attempt to communicate with them based on what they found, and it was responding to Joanna. Now, he went in, and he's very good with trying to get validity with his evidence. So he's like, what if there's something here? It might not be Joanna. It might be pretending to be Joanna. So he went in and he started using a bunch of different names. He's like, oh, hey, Darth Vader, if you're here, tap this, make this light up, and it would light up. And it'd be like, if Darth Vader is your name and you are a spirit trapped here, tap on the wall. And like, they'd hear tapping on the wall. It's like, it's pretending to be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
So like, if spirits and demons are real, one of them could have picked up on this and like the fear related to it and just done it to mess with people, to terrorize people.
Oh yeah. I mean, if that's a thing, that could possibly be very true, because if you take an instance, especially the people that, you know, you talk in demons and spirits and things, some are calming, I would feel like would be, like you said, that vampiristic calmingness. So they could calm you, but later on put the fear in you, as the girls were scared for their families' lives. So they thought they had to do what they had to do at the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. And if Slender Man is real, I have a theory. Now, have you ever heard of the Philip experiment?
I've heard a little bit of it. I haven't read a lot into it.
Okay, so the Philip experiment was a 1972 parapsychological experiment conducted in Toronto, and they were going to do it to determine whether subjects can communicate with fictionalized ghosts through expectations of human will. So what they all did, they came together, these researchers, and they created an entire fictional character, and they decided they were going to communicate with its spirit through a seance. The character they created, his name was Philip Aylesford, and they referred to him as Philip during the entire test. His fictional history coincided with actual events and places, but there was a few contradictions and errors in it. So like, let's say someone made him and, you know, he died in 2010. Okay, they went in and they're like, oh, he went to a Backstreet Boys concert, but Bon Jovi was the lead singer of the Backstreet Boys, and that was his favorite singer. Like, they would take real things and they would change it just a little bit, just so like they knew it would be related to their study. The character they made was born in 1642 in England, had an early military career, and was knighted by the age of 16. He was involved in the English Civil War, became personal friends with Charles II, working for him as a spy, and he was unhappily married to a woman named Dorothea, and later fell in love with a Romanian girl who was accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake. In despair, because his lover was burned at the stake, he committed suicide in 1654 at the age of 30. So they made this entire fictional life, and they came up with the idea that he haunted the specific house that they went out and rented, and they would talk to him like he was a real person. Like they'd be like, "Hey Philip, I'm going to open the fridge. Hey Philip, we're going to watch TV." And they would also repeat the same story about Philip. So these researchers, they got together around a table, and they had an initial seance. They had no contact, no communication, and no phenomenon happen. Nothing happened at all until one researcher changed the conditions. He dimmed the lights, and he changed the entire environment to mimic that of a traditional seance, like the seance you would see in a horror movie. Immediately after that, participants felt a presence at the table. They began to feel vibrations, unexplained breezes. There was echoes coming through the house that didn't come from any of them, and there was tapping sounds that responded to questions about Philip's life. At one point during the experiment, the table was tilted on a single leg, and in other times it moved across the room with no human contact. Although there was audio, video, and witness accounts of this paranormal phenomenon, the actual ghost of Philip, the spirit, never appeared to the participants. So it was deemed inconclusive. It was also criticized because they didn't have a control group. Don't understand how you would have a control group for this, but they didn't have a control group. But later it was recreated 2 other times with a person named Lilith and a man named Humphrey, and it yielded similar results under similar circumstances. They all had this weird stuff happen because they manifested it. Like they made themselves believe that Philip was a real person who was actually haunting this place. They made a backstory, and because people believed in it, they think that's why weird stuff happened. Kind of the same way they're doing with Slenderman.
Yeah, absolutely. It relates very well to Slenderman. You know, it goes back to the imagination thing, I think, and what's going through your head, especially at the moment.
Well, would it also surprise you if Slenderman in his existence was backed up by religious beliefs?
No, it would not. Because religion goes a lot of different ways.
Well, in Tibetan Buddhism, there is a mystical and paranormal concept of an entity called a tulpa. And a tulpa is a being that was created through spiritual or mental powers. And basically, the collective thoughts of a community can manifest stuff. Like if all of your people need someone to come into town and save them because they are starving and oppressed, if you get enough people to believe that person is coming, it'll manifest as a spirit and come and do it.
Crazy.
If this thought process is real, which there's a ton of people that try to summon tulpas, that could explain that they could have manifested a Slender Man or multiple Slender Men into existence. It got really sad when I was looking this stuff up, because I was looking up modern, tulpa people, like the people who try to bring tulpas in, and I thought it would be something cool. The people who try to bring tulpas into existence now, they're My Little Pony fans who imagine their certain character or a new character that they want to add to the Ponyverse, and they get together through the internet, and they all focus on one specific character and try to will it into existence.
That's crazy.
It's
Now, what religion was this again?
It's an idea from Tibetan Buddhism, but it's like
Okay. Buddhism's very popular, so that doesn't surprise me that this is still going on to an extent today.
yeah. I mean, I don't think the Buddhists themselves are making Slender Man a thing, but
No.
it's just like an idea that goes back to their beliefs.
Oh yeah, yeah, they go back to their beliefs. Yes.
Well, also, if you want to get into like your mind bringing something into existence, there a lot of paranormal researchers have subscribed to the theory that poltergeists aren't actually ghosts. It's just like a manifestation of overwhelming emotion, because most poltergeist activity happens in a time of stress, like when you're fixing a house, rebuilding it, and you're stressed out, or in a time of grief or anger. Like they also show up when someone dies. So like your emotions could be manifesting as something. So, and if people are actually reading these Slenderman stories and believe in it, it could manifest as that, according to that idea. If you subscribe to it, I don't.
I don't either. But I could see that idea being a thing.
I thought your idea hit. I mean, you hit it on the head. It's a overactive imagination and almost like a primal fear. You see a weird shape that kind of looks like a humanoid looking shape in the woods, or you're going into your office and it's dark and your immediate instinct is, I'm in danger, I need to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why, especially in children, it took off, because of an imagination thing. As adults, we're not imagining things. Like, I imagine what my future will be, but not like an imaginary friend or stuff like that anymore, like I was when I was a child. Your imagination is a lot more concentrated now as an adult. And then as a child, your imagination, I think, is everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I remember coming home from school, and I don't know if this was imaginary or it was something real, or not. Technically, my mom asked me about it when I came home, because I said this to my teacher, but I was like, "What's that man doing over there?" And she's like, "What man?" And we were in a kindergarten classroom, and apparently I told the teacher that there was a man on a ladder in the room, and he was taking down our like pictures that we had hanging on the wall. And there was no one there, which I don't think it was a ghost. Like, I don't. Like, there's nothing weird about that place. I think it was just, like, my imagination was running wild. I also had, like, my imaginary friend when I was little. I'd watch weird shit. Like, whatever my mom or my uncles were watching, I was, like, plopped on the couch and watching it. My imaginary friend was the Donnie Darko rabbit. So, like, I saw that rabbit when I was little. Like, we would just play. Like, I'd play with, like, WWE action figures, and he would be there. In my head, at least. So, like, I can get the overactive imagination, because you think it's there. Like, when you're a kid. It's not when you grow up that you're like, wow, I was a weird-ass kid who plays with the Donnie Darko rabbit.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same way. I guess I use my imagination a lot more personally. Not more than you, I'm saying, but just in general, because I'm an only child, I don't have family that lives around here, because in the area we come from, your cousin lives 2 miles down the road, a lot of people, and you can go hang out with them or whatever. I mean, I had friends and I would go play with them, stay the night, whatever, but if I was at home in the middle of the day, I would get outside and just throw the football around by myself or whatever, And I think from my perspective as an only child, my imagination really ran more wild because I feel like, I didn't play a lot of video games and stuff like that till I got teenage years. So I was I played, but not like, it was like Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64, which had only so much things you could do with them. So like you had to have other ways to stimulate yourself, and that was my way of doing it, was using my imagination as a child.
I think we both have come to a conclusion on this. Slenderman, real or fake?
Fake.
100% fake. Some people might be seeing weird stuff out there. I'm not going to say cryptids or demons or spirits aren't real, because I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows, but like, I don't think Slenderman is an actual thing out there. They could be seeing something and misidentifying it, or it could be their imagination, or it could be a ghost. and it's just taking a certain form. I don't know, but the being of Slender Man is not real.
I would agree with that. Absolutely. You said it best.
Well, I think that is going to be it for the very first episode of the Other Side podcast. I appreciate you helping me out with it, be my guest host.
I appreciate you having me on, sir.
You can come on whenever you want. If anyone who is listening to it made it to the very end, first off, I'm very surprised. I didn't expect this. And secondly, if you want to get any updates or follow us or anything, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at podcastTOS on both of them. We're going to try to be more active on there. And if you use Reddit, we have r/TheOtherSidePod. We just actually made the page 2 days ago, so it's fairly new. And I think my friend is the only person to subscribe to it. So if y'all want to hop on there, give us suggestions, tell us how shit we were, make fun of my heavy breathing, go on there. Join us next week. I really hope I don't live to regret this because I'm not very consistent. Join us next week when we take another look at things from the other side.